Okay, we're gonna
Recording in progress.
get things rolling here. It is 7 o'clock and we will call to order the Jamaica Selectboard Meeting for Monday, May 23rd. First item, there are a couple things people have requested to add to the agenda. Patty Dixon is here and would like to give an update on the stuff going on with the school. And then Kate wanted to add, not quite sure how to phrase this, but maybe you got it a little bit better, just a discussion regarding reporting of COVID within the close proximities, I guess. And then we also have an overweight permit request. Anything else from the board or items? Okay. Next item is to approve the minutes from our last meeting, the May 9th Select Board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
And I do have several things to update. On item number 8. And Sarah, can you hear okay? Yep, okay. Item number 8, there was a hanging sentence there that said she also said that. And I think it should say that if this bid is accepted, money could also be budgeted for next fiscal year. So it's a discussion of bidding on, or accepting the bid for the bridge work on Pikes Falls Road. And it was, I think that's what got left out. And there's also a blank in there to insert the total cost. And the total cost for the bid was $356,000. That wasn't included in the. Item number 7, there was a few things. This was discussion regarding the road reclassification. Says there are some roads that the Plan Commission recommended no changes, and I would like to note for the minutes what those roads are. There was Skinner Swamp Road, White Road, and Millbrook Road. Second item was Hollow Road, and it said recommended to turn into a class 4. It's recommended to be changed to a legal trail. And then on Turkey Mountain Road, it reads, or it should read, a portion is recommended to be discontinued that lies within the state park lands. So here it says a reclass from class 3 to class 4, but it's actually to be discontinued was the recommendation. That's all I had.
Should I need to again with the changes proposed by Greg?
I second the motion.
Did we talk about all that?
We did.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Big long meeting, remember it was long.
Oh, I remember. But I didn't know if we went too long.
That was the only thing I had, too. Agreed.
Okay, so all in favor of approving the minutes as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Meeting minutes are approved. The next item is to report on the Rescue Inc. Board of Trustees meeting. Tom attended the meeting last week.
I did.
Just have a quick update.
Yep, so I did go to the meeting last week. It composed of a presentation by Drew Hazelton where he basically explained the services that Rescue Inc. provides, which they don't just drive you to the hospital. They, emergency services, emergency responders, disaster responses, so on and so forth. Then he went and talked about a little bit about the finances. As we know, Brattleboro is leaving, maybe, but at this time they are leaving them, so that will cause a shortfall of their finances of about $240,000. How does this impact the other towns in the system? According to Drew, for the next 3 years at least, they are going to honor their contracts. So that means a 0% increase for us this year and a 1% increase for the 2 subsequent years, for 23 and 24. So what does that mean? Currently, if you're in Brattleboro, you pay $24.02 per person Out here, we pay $29.08 per person, so it's a little more expensive, and it's based on which office you're out of. So there's the one down in Townsend, and then there's the one in Brattleboro. So we pay the $29, and we're only looking for the 1% increase over the next, 2 years, or 2% over the next 3 years. So, could that change? Yes. Obviously, they have, what he was saying is, they're in a much better position, because of the COVID they've done and all the vaccinations. They've made some revenue from that, and they have some reserve that they can put towards that $240,000. But they still are gonna have a shortfall more than likely. They have to figure out how they're gonna handle that over the longer term. If Brattleboro decides not to come back in, and as was in the news, the town manager who had made that decision or pushed that decision has resigned. So we'll see what happens there. So what it means for us is basically what he's saying is nothing's gonna change for Jamaica. We're continuing to use their services, and our costs are not gonna increase, so.
And we just approved their contract.
For at least for the foreseeable future, and, obviously Brattleboro is gonna have to figure out what they're gonna do, and then we'll go from there.
Well, thank you.
You want? Any other questions about it, or anything you wanna know?
Could I just add something? And
Yeah,
talk
sure,
about
go ahead.
Our rep, Stuart Barker, who I mentioned, is a very enthusiastic, well-informed representative. We're lucky to have him. That when Drew went to work for Rescue, it was very much in the red, and it's been in the black. And they would like to, as Tom was saying, stay that way, but, and I would just like to say, I thank you, Tom, for going. I couldn't go to that meeting. That if they ask for any of us to come down again at another meeting, that we do, that we really pay attention to this, because they, I remember when I went to their town meeting the first time, some of those guys, they can do anything on site that they can do in an ER. Some of those guys are trained a little past paramedic, whatever that is. So,
I have the list here, Andy, if you want.
hopefully it's, able to come through this all right. It sounds like we're gonna be okay.
So they have 9 ambulances, just some information. 9 ambulances, 78 staff, 5 critical care, 11 paramedics, 21 AEMTs and 38 EMTs, and 3 EMRs. So they have a lot of people at very different levels. Every call that comes in, they have, what's his name, I have it written down here, Mark Constantine, who's been there for 30 years, does an assessment. And he, basically, they assess what the issue is with the person, and then they make a decision on where they go. It's not always going to a hospital. It could be airlifting them out. It could be saying you're okay, and they're going to release you, take you home. So it depends on whatever they assess. So, they have a system that is proven for 56 years. And, we're very lucky to have them in the community.
Paul, question?
Who's our representative from Jamaica to
Stuart Barker.
Yep.
And he was at the meeting as well, on Thursday.
Were there other select board members from the?
There was a bunch, there was all kinds of people. It was well attended,
All right.
very well attended.
Well, thanks.
Filled the whole garage there. So.
All right, thank you. Next item is review and discussion of proposals and plan for the Water Street property. This is the 4 lots that, after Irene, that are now town-owned. And I don't even know how this got to this point, but there's a proposal out there. In the last year, I believe it was, we approved doing a wildflower garden along the strip of the sidewalk, and also the planting of 4 or 5 trees. Just back from that, so basically kind of this parallel to the sidewalk type thing is what's been approved. And there's been some other ideas floated around, and assuming that most of the people here now are here for that thing, I guess call it a thing. And I guess I don't know really where to start. I'll start with Jackie. Jackie's raised her hand.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Can I make a motion so this thing is like a
That's a good
discussion?
We can't make a motion and include the public in the discussion.
We can't?
No. Once we make a motion, only the board can discuss it. So, That's my understanding. Paul, isn't that correct?
I'm gonna come 50-50. I think you're right, but I can't defend it by the.
You are right.
So,
Yeah, so we
so
don't
what
have
I,
the motion yet because then it excludes all these people from
Yeah.
having the discussion with us.
I didn't know that.
But at some point, we can make a motion.
what I envision, and to keep the meeting sensible and sane, and is not to have, I mean, almost run it like the town meeting, where the board will hear, different thoughts and ideas, and then we'll draft a motion, and that all of the discussion will be addressed to the board to present ideas. There won't be any back and forth and no arguments to say, I like that, I don't like that. That's kind of how I see keeping this organized and
Civil.
and civil. Civil is the right word, right?
Just one more thing.
Sure.
Are the people on Zoom aware that there's a 50-plus signature petition against any, so.
As of now, I don't think anybody's aware of anything.
If they're presenting, I just want them to know when they're presenting that.
Sure. So one of the things that was presented to us today, that there was a petition passed around, and this is, I'll read it. This is there's several groups, I guess, that want to do something in that area, and I'll leave it at that as definition something. And then there is a number of residents that feel that there shouldn't be anything done. And so a petition has been presented that reads, "We, the undersigned residents and voters of the town of Jamaica, petition the Jamaica Select Board to keep the vacant properties on Water Street damaged by Tropical Storm Irene in their natural state. The area is now a haven for deer, birds, turkey, fox, and bear. Taking away the vegetation that has been established will be detrimental to wildlife and adjoining property owners." So that was presented. We've done a little bit of research. This doesn't have any legal binding aspect as far as how we react, but it obviously is taken as the voice of a group of the public. So. Okay.
I'd like to speak, seeing as though I was one of the people who brought this issue to this point somewhat unintentionally. I moved on to Water Street with my partner, Stephen Tolbert. It's Christmas 2020, and at that time renovated the house and was looking around the property and looking out my bedroom window, and bedroom window faces this property, which, as we all know, but for the record, it's the stretch of land between the current Tolbert property and the current Coyne property. And it's 300 feet long, the length of a football field, and it goes back, I think it's about a 3 to 4 acre parcel. So it's a very popular stretch. There's a lot of pedestrian traffic. People coming from the state park walk through on Water Street to avoid Main Street, or locals lap it. There's just a lot of pedestrian traffic on a daily basis of people who are going down Water Street and often looking around Main Street. So anyways, in looking out my window, I was recognizing how the land was not very attractive, at least in my view, which is the field. And I have a particular love of flowers, gardens, pollinator gardens in particular. In fact, there's a movement in Vermont to have a community pollinator garden in every town in Vermont that's very supported and is making rounds. And I wanted to be a part of that. In fact, I called the people a medical doctor couple who are organizing this pollinator garden idea in every town, and I suggested that it would be wonderful to have Jamaica as part of that. So anyways, it was 2021, it was 10 years after the houses were decimated on that stretch of land, and I thought, good timing, I'm here, I'm able and willing to donate my time, my money to this project. And so, I presented to the select board, hey, could I arrange to make a pollinator garden on this stretch just up from the sidewalk? There's basically 8 feet of property that's mowed on a volunteer basis. And then what I proposed was to take the next 10 feet and just fill it with beautiful pollinator flowers. So I got a lot of volunteers, a lot of community support, and spent a lot of my own money to pursue this plan with the select board's approval. And all good intentions, it wasn't quite as successful as I hoped it would be. There was just not enough water to get the seeds to germinate on that whole strip. And crabgrass reappeared, and it was just too much for me and a couple of volunteers to handle. So I just backed off and made a beautiful pollinator garden on the property that was closest to ours that I could manage myself, and with a little help from Tom. So anyways, so I figured, well, that was great. People loved it. I cannot tell you how many people passed by and said how beautiful it was, and it was teeming with butterflies and bees, which you know are endangered species, or they're endangered, their habitats are endangered. So anyways, next year comes around, and Karen Amadin was wanting to plant 4 trees, 5 in total, in honor of the homes that were lost in Irene. So I backed off from wanting to do the wildflowers again. I said, fine, I tried that. Karen was passionate about this idea, so I said, great, go for it. I might do some flowers to the side. She went to the town, got the approval for the trees, and it was clear to me that we had probably a little bit of a difference as to where the tree should be placed, and I didn't want to have any conflict with somebody who I like so much. So I invited Erica Bowman as a third party into the discussion, knowing that she's a master architect, landscape architect. And she graciously agreed to participate in the conversation as a third party with immense knowledge. So we met on site, and with the town's approval for these trees, plotted where those trees should go. We all agreed. And while Erica was there, she identified, which we'd known, but she made issue of the fact that the area has a lot of invasive species, or has, well, a couple of invasive species that, and she can speak to this better than I, that are undesirable, things that we do not want in that plan of land, namely black locust and Japanese knotweed. So she said, we really should have ideally a management plan to reclaim this land, to create, recreate it as a habitat that flourishes throughout the years. So I'm here tonight in support of a management plan to basically make that parcel of land everything that this petition suggests that it should be: a natural habitat, a place of beauty, and my personal desire is to continue to try to make the front meadow a wildflower meadow. So it's pretty, because if we don't address the invasive species, they will take over. And I really don't want to look out my bedroom window at a bunch of knotweed and invasive species, nor do I want them. They're already, black locusts are now across the street, beyond the guardrail, on the stream bed, ready to go downstream. So the intention, when we gathered to meet, there was talk of oh my gosh, what could be done on this parcel of land, and a lot of ideas were thrown out that people had heard, one thing or another, but the consensus is, in the management plan that Erica put together graciously, is to basically retain the habitat, but to make sure that it is maintained, preserved responsibly, and then I might throw in that my personal objective is to carry on the desire for a field that's attractive for the many pedestrians who walk by and for the bees and the butterflies. So that's where we are. When Erica proposed a plan that the select board received the night before your last meeting. It was May 10th, I believe, which spells this out. She's found somebody who could do the work, and whatever you feel it's appropriate in this meeting, I think she should speak to the plan to inform you what it entails, because frankly, it is really not in contradiction to the petition, ironically.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I would agree with everything that that Jackie just said, so. I mean, there's very little parking there there really isn't any parking there to put anything there other than just a flower garden to walk by and to just manage it and keep those invasive species out.
And also, when the town took over the property after the storm, it was ruled that there would be no permanent structures on that land. So I think we're all trying to achieve the same thing here. We just want to do it in a professional manner, rather than letting weeds take over and throwing our hands up in the air and say, well, I guess that's what we have to have. So I'm here to move forward a plan. I'm hoping tonight we get approval, a motion set that's reasonably, after discussion, and reasonably presented for the town to take on budgetary responsibility to at least remove the invasives, and then perhaps any beautification could happen through the years later through grant money or personal donations.
Well, I like to say my name is Grace Coyne. I've lived at 153 Depot Street for 54 years now. That's always been my childhood home. That's our bedroom window looking out at the field, and it's amazing. The flowers are beautiful, trees are nice. Plant some trees that are going to get a root system for the next flood, because we all know it's going to come. And leave it alone. We have the Jamaica State Park. We have flowers are fine, but like to weed whack all that crap back, the cost of it, what it's going to cost us, and the wildlife that's already there, just leave it alone. The trees are great. You plant them too close to the sidewalk. Once those things start to grow, it's going to make a mess.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm on 161 Depot Street. I look out, I see beautiful green trees. I'm not seeing the field so much where it has been mowed. I do not want to see that all chopped down and bad. It was suggested to me tonight if someone would go in with just a weed whacker with a blade, cut the invasive, leave the rest of it.
Yes, that's
It does not need to have a brush hog go in and clean everything. And just take the invasive out, you know, with one of these blades. It doesn't have to go in and cut everything. And we've spent enough money on that property, buying it from, you know, buying it, paying the people off, and why spend more?
I have a quick question about that, and maybe that was a misunderstanding that I had. My understanding was at the outset of the season, you remove the invasive species. Like, you have to be aggressive about it, like roots and all. Leave the rest, and it's at the end of the season, right before the winter. So when all, you know, babies are born, we're in the dormant period, that's when the bush hog happens. Am I wrong about that? Maybe
Erica would be the one to speak to.
Erica is more
Right.
to speak.
Go ahead, Erica.
You're a problem.
Hi. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, yeah, I can speak to this. First of all, it sounds like there's a lot of support for maintaining a natural area, which is good. And I don't think it's as complicated as we all fear it is. But the first step would be to be speaking very specifically how it would be done by this particular guy. That he would take out the existing invasive species and some tree communities that make it impossible to maintain by just a yearly mow. So he would do this by grinding the trees down. So there would be no waste of the trees. With the knotweed, he would dig it out and bring it with him and dispose of the knotweed. That's a harder thing to just grind down because it comes back. After all of that is done, the way to maintain a wild meadow is to do a yearly mow, and that will keep the woody species from being able to take hold. And so when we, if we were to do this, the way we would do it is to go out and mark the boundaries of tree removal. And by tree, I mean saplings and black locusts and things like that fit that category. Maintain things that are very desirable, like buffers could go in there and just mow it once, late enough in the year that it's past any threat to bedding wildlife. Now, I did want to point something out, and that is that in our own town plan, on page 17 in the biological diversity policies, we agree that we will ensure the conservation, protection, and proper stewardship of significant natural communities, carefully assess potential impacts of proposed development on significant wildlife habitats in order to preserve such habitats. And we also say that we will, number 5, is prevent the spread and support efforts to remove invasive species and prohibit the distribution of any plants on the federal noxious plant list. There are state and county-wide efforts to remove things such as the black locust and knotweed specifically, which will travel by seed or by root downstream and infect other properties. So this plan is specifically to remove those things. A secondary plan could be to improve upon the meadows if that were something that is desired, and by improve upon, it would be to diversify the meadow plants for greater habitat possibilities, NGD. But none of that is anything other than stewardship for a natural area. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
And when, I'm not a select board member, but I know enough as Andy is, like, you guys get bids for things. Who is this guy who comes up with the price? Like, why not put it out for bid, like, to see anybody else's idea?
I think that absolutely makes sense. If whatever we decide, I'm not gonna allude to which direction we go, but anything that would require any kind of cost to the town needs to go out to bid, even if it's mowing the lawn or planting a seed or digging up a tree. So yeah, actually, and I apologize, Andy, I was gonna probably just, I mean, I was gonna listen.
Just one little thing about,
Yeah.
when we took that property over from Two Rivers Ottaquechee, it says that that land cannot be transferred. I looked into it. I got an email somewhere. It can't be transferred. We already know we can't put anything insurable on it. We have to really watch it with insurance, right? Just being on it or anything like that. But the last thing it says is we're not, I know what I just heard makes a lot of sense. We're not obligated to maintain that property. That was part of the last line in the, looked like kind of a deed. You know, at first I thought it could be sold to the adjacent property owners for $1, but that seems like that went away and then now there's new rules.
Interesting.
But anyway, so that's a caveat at the end. What happened was FEMA gave them the $33,000, and then there was a mortgage on one house, couple. It was a bad scene, as we well know. But so they were like at a total loss, and this nonprofit made up a lot of the rest to ease the financial and, you know, what was emotional loss. And that's how that came to be. We did incur some expense, but they gave tens of thousands of dollars to those property owners, or they would have really took a hit of whatever they owed. And just one other thing is that of all those owners, nobody has asked for any kind of memorial trees, or not that that's not a nice thing. One of them was actually put off by it because she said she's trying to forget about the whole damn thing. She doesn't even like driving by here. So I just want that on record that wasn't a request by any of the owners, as trivial as it sounds. And Jim, I'll be quiet after this for a minute. But what people are really worried about is brush hogging that. I'm just like, I've been on the board for going on 8 years. I've got more calls and more concerns about this than everything else combined. I wasn't on the select board during Irene, but I was health officer. So that's all I'm gonna say so far. And the press is watching.
Okay, yeah.
I have a question about sustainability. I'm listening to Jackie to say how difficult it was to sustain what project that she started, that I also bought into because I felt it was, the wildflowers was a good idea. And when I hear Erica saying we, and I hear you saying that the town doesn't have any obligation to maintain, who is the we who's going to make this sustainable if you went ahead and do this? I mean, it's just a question.
Yeah, so I'll speak to that. A lot of things do take time to establish themselves not just wildflowers, but events, and you can think of all kinds of things that you can't give up in the first year. But I think going down the road, we have to decide what we want to do, and it could be nothing, could be maintained. I think we're I don't think we're on the, even discussing create something. I think we're at the point of maintaining something. And even though the deed says we're not obligated to, but I think as stewards of a piece of property that's an asset to the town, whether it's for wildlife, visual, just quiet space, all those things are assets to the town. It doesn't have to be, have trails or a bench or anything, but it's a nice space. We have some responsibility, and maybe tonight, or maybe it's something that we take a little bit more time on, but we have a decision to say we delegate some money to that. That's how it sustains. It doesn't happen all by itself. So, I'm sorry, I'll get back to you. So,
I just wanted to talk a little bit about the invasive species. So, when I moved in 4 years ago, I noticed in the late spring a bunch of poison parsnip popping up along the river. And I took it upon myself, and in the field, and I took it upon myself. First year I pulled about 20 plants. Second year I pulled about 10 plants. Now we know it's not a good species. If you touch it and you get the sun, you get burned and such. Third year I pulled, I think last year, about 5. And this year I haven't seen any. So I look back and say, if I hadn't gone and done that 4 years ago, that would be covered with poison parsnip now, because it's such an invasive species. And I think we have to look at it that way. If you look at the space now, you say, you wouldn't even know, because that's just not there. And it looks very natural, but those types of species really do take over if we aren't stewards of that land and do that. And so that's why I agree with Erica's proposal when we talk about getting rid of the invasive species. What I want to see as a select board and a select person is a detailed plan, that we have a plan, and it's not just a free-for-all, like, oh yeah, let's just go in and clean it up, or something like that. That's very vague. I really want a very specific how we're going to do it moving forward. And actually, I think in many ways, if we have that plan, and we can agree, that we can, it's advantageous to keeping it a natural space, because we have a plan to keep it a natural space, rather than every year someone comes up and says, hey, let's do this there, let's do that there. Instead, we have this plan that very clearly lays out that we want this to be natural, we want it to be there for wildlife, and we're not developing it and putting trails in, doing all kinds of stuff, or dog park, or what all the other things that we talked about, that it is going to remain natural. And so, that, at least from my standpoint, that's what I want to see from the board. That we could find that agreement, that we'd have this plan written out, so that, and again, in 10 years, none of us are probably going to be on the board, and that board may decide to do something completely different. But at least for now, it gives us a little more stability, and it gives us a real direction, and in many ways, protection. That's all I have.
Karen, sorry, I'm going to jump back. I'm sorry.
I was just going to follow up with something you said, and then Tom kind of covered. You mentioned trails. I'm like, I don't want trails in there. People walk by my.
No, we all said no. We're saying no to that.
20 feet away from the border of that, and and I look out my kitchen window, and all I see is green leaves and trees. I don't see anything else. I don't want that gone.
No, I threw that out there as something we're not going to.
Low-growing shrubs now, and I've never had it cleared before, even with David when he lived there. He had a garden and such like, but we had our own privacy there, and I don't want to lose that.
Yeah, if I can speak, Greg, I would never support anything where we're cutting down that line of maple trees, the large woods that are there, the sugar maples and stuff. We're talking, when I look at a plan, what I want to see in a plan is get rid of the junk. Because what will happen then is more maples will come in, and oaks may come in, and, you know, other trees that are more desirable. But if we let the crapwood, or whatever they want to call it, the black locust in there, it takes over, and poplars, they take over, and then it's just a bunch of junk. And the other trees get pushed out.
It chokes out the
It
nature.
chokes out everything else, yeah.
I just wanted to say that Tom made some good points, and having a real comprehensive plan and knowing exactly what we're doing for the future and keeping it a real natural place is great.
And I think, I mean, for no pun intended, but what I'm hearing is or maybe personally, a very minimally invasive plan. Not something that's gonna take rototilling and bushwhacking, and it's going out there on a designated time with a qualified person or persons and saying, there's a tree I'm gonna remove, and all by hand. I mean, it's very labor intensive, and it takes years. I mean, I'm on the board of the Friends of the West River Trail, and we own a parcel of property down along the West River, 22 acres, that was bought through some conservation easements with the Vermont Land Trust and such, and went out to the Department of Agriculture and got some grants to remove invasives, and it was a $10,000 project. I mean, it's pricey. I mean, but it wasn't just go mow the thing. I mean, it was very, I mean, there was a lot of attention kept to keeping it pristine and keeping, I mean, just doing it very, very gently, so to speak. So anyway, that's my personal opinion, not representing the boards.
I would like to express how lucky we are to have a nationally renowned landscape architect whose whole wheelhouse is protecting natural habitats, participate in this discussion. And I just want to thank Erica for her time and her advice. And I'm hoping that she'll continue to offer advice for consideration, because if we leave this discussion, as so many discussions are left after a meeting of sorts, it could just sit without moving forward. And I think it's important to address this issue now that it's on the table, and not just let it go away for second bids when nobody rises forward, or if you need a second bid, let's not go of the opportunity to move it along.
But sitting on the board, I don't want to talk about this all night. Sitting on the board, if there were 100 people that signed a petition saying they don't want that brush hog, we do it anyway? Doesn't matter what 60 or 100 people want? Why would the select board do anything that adjacent landowners for or against? Why would they do anything that people were against? That's just a comment. I don't want an answer. It's just an observance I'm making.
Kate's had her hand up for a while, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I don't know
sorry.
if you saw that.
I can't, oh, there we go.
Yeah, originally I just wanted to point out that Erica wanted to speak, but I am wanting, it would be great if it could be clarified how far back the proposal was to be doing the brush hog and all of that. Just to clarify that it is, as somebody said, not get rid of the maples and whatnot. But also, I think a lot of the people who, I'm guessing, who signed the petition didn't see the proposal. And I think that they're probably, they don't have enough knowledge really to know what the petition is against. And I think rather than, I understand what Andy's saying, and I also agree that what Jackie's saying is really important, that we don't just let this fall by the wayside. It's really important to have something done now. But I think if you're talking about 100 people or 50 people or 41 people signing a petition, if the people who are signing the petition don't know really what the proposal is that they're against, then it doesn't, they need to be informed. The town needs to be informed if you think that there are really a lot of people who would be against it. I think a lot of people would be for it if they really knew.
I guess the petition doesn't necessarily speak to the specifics of a proposal. I know there's I think there's a fear of a proposal that might come about that would say, go out and clear cut it and all that kind of stuff. And so, but I don't think it specifically talks to.
No, it specifically says to do nothing.
Well, it says taking away vegetation that has been established will be detrimental to wildlife and adjoining property owners. And I think Kate's point is, the proposal is to do exactly the opposite.
Right.
The proposal is to act in a way that allows the vegetation to flourish and to drive and improve a habitat for wildlife and for adjoining property owners. That, I was a little confused when I saw the petition because I thought, it seems like we're all in violent agreement.
Yeah.
We all want the same thing. So and the bush hogging, and I think this is really Erica who has to talk to us.
She may have her hand up and she doesn't have a.
I can't see that.
either.
Sorry.
But I'm gonna ask if Erica wouldn't mind my understanding was, it's, as I think has been confirmed, this is not like at the beginning of the season or multiple times in the season. It's at the very end of the season and in a targeted area to do exactly what Tom has done single-handedly for this area. Take the steps so that the invasive species don't return. So it's targeted and it's not at the beginning of the season. It's at a time when I would have hoped for the neighboring landowners is pretty, it's not aggressive or significant because it's at the end of the growing, basically right before winter. So Erica, can you clarify that for us?
Yeah, I can clarify that. The proposal does not specify the time. There are two parts to the proposal though. The only part that this guy, John Carpino, would be responsible for is a one-day invasive species removal and preparation of that area to be mowed in the future and once yearly, and that's just as a maintenance level mow to keep the woody plants out. It also states, the revised proposal states that the boundaries of this will be determined by a town agent. And so there's opportunity for, I think there's a lot of opportunity for consensus here to just make sure that the neighboring property owners feel that their screening is left untapped and that the place becomes maintainable. To answer, I think that also answers Kate's question about how far back the brush hog work would go. I mean, the natural delineation line might be where the field transforms into more of a wetland because there is a line there where it's marshier and there's ferns growing. There are some invasive species back there that could be targeted for removal, such as some burning bushes and I believe some barberries, but those are pretty easy removal. But most of the future mowing preparation would be in the area that is predominantly grasses and goldenrod currently.
But mowing is not part of this initial proposal.
That's
what it
what
sounds
I see. I see
Right.
two different things here. And to be honest, I wouldn't support mowing now because all the goldenrod's coming up. If we mow right now,
Right.
it's gonna be bare for the rest of the year. I don't support that. I don't want that because, there's plants there that are desirable. But I think it's critical that we get rid of the invasive species.
Right.
And I think,
I do think that you probably would still get goldenrod blooming. However, that invasive species removal project could take place in late fall as well, and maybe that would satisfy more parties.
and I hate to interject, I keep feeling really strongly that we're somewhat putting the cart in front of the horse, and that we need the management plan of what our objectives are, a scope of work, before we start talking about accepting a proposal.
Well, that's, I think that's what Erica wrote, is
Did
sort
you
of the
read
scope of
the
work.
management plan?
I sent that around. Or she sent it around. actually. Someone sent it around.
Pretty detailed plan.
Yeah, it's a very detailed plan. There's two phases. The first phase was to get rid of the invasive, the second phase was to do the brush hogging.
Okay.
If we chose to do that. They're not
Or
dependent
we
on.
could just choosing to do the first piece of it,
Right.
so that we can stop the encroachment of the invasive species at the very least.
And then are you gonna go all the way down the West River and get it all out from all the land that it tapped since the flood?
I think, I hear you, Grace, but that's really, if that is the view, there's no stewardship at all in the state. Each town takes its role as its scope and makes its decisions to be as sensitive and as community oriented for the state of Vermont. Just if Townsend doesn't take the same step, that's too bad, but that is no reason for Jamaica not to take the right step. But again, I think one of the possibilities is to undertake this very first step, which is literally for one day to have this fellow come in and take out the knotwood and the black locust, which I'm struggling to understand why that would be a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad
Right.
thing, but
Okay.
what I don't like is, again, put it out for bid, make it like, a lot of people have no idea like what is even going on, like that needs to be made more public.
So there are rules that the board has to follow for triple bid, and I can't remember the dollar amount, so I don't remember if that makes. Unfortunately, sometimes we don't get triple bids. So we absolutely can have it looked at for cost and for, quality of bid, but ultimately, if the board makes the decision to go ahead and do it, and that's the only bid we have, the board is authorized to undertake that. We do it regularly.
Is it
Just as a
3,500 or
practical matter.
2,500? I
There's
forget.
thought it was
certain different
1800.
levels, and there's a term for whether or not there's other people qualified, but we
Right.
still are obligated to put it out to bid.
Absolutely.
We just may not
Bear-
get.
We don't always get the bids back.
Bear in mind that we just barely got someone to do our cemeteries, and we're maybe gonna inherit the big one. And now we're gonna take on all of this stuff. And one more time, whether the people are not well informed with the project, this petition has to have some weight. All it says is, we, the undersigned residents and voters of the town of Jamaica, Vermont, petition the Jamaica Select Board to keep vacant properties on Water Street damaged by Tropical Irene their natural state. That's all.
I'll sign the
That's, no,
petition,
that's,
I would sign that.
I was on a petition too.
I don't see that as inconsistent.
Give me the petition.
well, then it's worded wrong. They don't want anything done with it.
But if the invasive species take over, do we
It's
want
not
that?
leaving it
Then it's not
natural. That's
leaving
not
it
leaving it
natural
natural.
state. That's,
I mean, the wildlife is
that
not
will
gonna.
force the wildlife out, that will force the
They're not,
natural plants out.
not gonna live in, they're gonna live in the maples and
Right.
they're natural.
What we want, and if you go back on my side of the property, towards my house, and you go back, there's hundreds of maples back there. Hundreds of maples that are 10 feet tall. It's great, and if we could get that to get those trees to get bigger, I'd support that 100%.
Right.
Good.
Yes.
Go ahead, yeah.
I'm getting mixed messages from the chairman of the board who sits there and says, we're getting the cart before the horse, or whatever you said, and now everybody's saying what we're gonna do, when we're gonna do it, what time of year we're gonna do it. And you're
My vote
saying,
is only one vote of an
I
equal
know
number
that,
of
but
board
you're
members.
saying
so-
as a chair, let's back up, take a good look at the proposal. I mean, I think you've got work to do. I mean, before people start saying,
And that's my
let's get
opinion
bids.
too. I mean,
Yes.
I do that
So
out
that's
there.
why I'm getting a mixed message, is because I'm hearing people all over saying, okay, let's do it now, when are you gonna do it in the fall, you're gonna do it. That
That's the
sounds-
beauty of public discussion. We all each
That's
have our
right,
own
public
opinions
discussion,
and,
But
yeah.
I'm looking for direction, excuse me,
Right.
I'm speaking. I'm looking for direction from the board of where you want to do this proposal. Do you want to look at it, really carefully look at it, and then talk about bids and stuff, or?
I don't think we're to that point yet.
No,
That's why
no,
we're still
neither.
talking.
That's why I'm confused, and that's why I'm asking.
Can I clarify? I wanted to understand, I wanted to make it clear, the temporal element of the plan that's been proposed. I was not suggesting, please understand, I was not suggesting that that this board vote on, do this on this date, do this on this date, do this on this date. I wanted to make sure that everybody understood, who's listening, who might watch after, what this proposal proposed in terms of the timing. Then I went on to say, the first piece, which is it's a pretty targeted piece of this proposal, is to remove the invasive species. As Erica said, a one-day event, and that has a separate price associated with it. Now, as a board member, I am, and I think someone raised it earlier, I'm loath to have discussions continue when there is a targeted piece of the proposal potentially that we could act on as a board. I feel that that's our responsibility, to look at these pieces. We won't necessarily vote for it, but the way the proposal was set up, and I have reviewed it, it is something that, it's like a Chinese menu. You can take pieces and say, this piece I think is consistent with every opinion that's been expressed. I don't think there's a real desire to have that parcel of land continue to be taken over by invasive species. That's certainly inconsistent with the text of this petition. And I think I'm hearing from those who are here that we don't want, that in general, people don't want that land to be taken over by black locust and knotweed or other invasive species. So if that's the only, I would like to open for discussion or have a continued discussion that potentially that more concise, targeted action might be discussed and might be approved. I'm not saying it is. I'm not giving it a timeline or anything like that. And it's just a discussion. So please understand, I'm with Greg, no cart before the horse, but I think a fulsome discussion of what's possible is helpful to the town.
Did you put the proposal on the town website so people
We
can
do
read
not.
it?
I can do that. I mean, it's open meeting. Sure, I can put that up there.
Sure.
I will do that.
And the landowners haven't seen the proposal, so I mean, if you, I understand it's lengthy, I don't know, I don't know anything
It's
about it.
one
except
page.
for- So if you could put it on the website, then people could actually access it and look at it.
Yeah.
I would appreciate that.
Public documents, certainly.
Yeah.
If I can speak, I mean, I think the biggest concern that Nora, I have, Andy probably has, is who's making the decision on what we take out. And I think that's where a detailed plan comes in. And, Erica says, well, okay, so who's gonna go around and walk around with the guy who's cutting all this out and say, we're cutting this tree, we're cutting that knotweed out there, oh, look, there's a spot of knotweed over there, oh, there's a barberry over there. That's where I, think people are uncomfortable, and maybe I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, please say. But because we don't want them to say, look, and there's all these maple trees. Let's take those out too. We don't want that. So I want it to be, and again, I want it to be very specific on what we're doing and who has that oversight. Is it the board? Is it someone in town? Is it Keith and the road crew? I don't know. I don't know who would have that. Is it? Are we going to deputize Erica to have that oversight? Those are the questions which I really want.
Or a committee of
Or a committee, set up a committee and the committee goes and does that. That's a possibility too, to set up a committee.
And that's, so when it gets put out the bid, we ask for the qualifications of the people that are doing the work and for references and that type of thing too, and that we're not just hiring somebody who has a brush hog. I mean, we're hiring somebody who knows
Correct.
what the species are and whether it's, collaboration of a committee or anything like that.
I would be against spending any money, the minimal amount of money on that property. The natural state is what's meant in that petition. I'm not gonna just talk about that. Is it just leave it alone, let it grow. That's all they sign.
I would like to speak. This is Susan All, and I'm a master gardener, and so have some interest in plants. And I think what I'm hearing is there is some agreement that there's an opportunity to think about the species of plants that are growing in this space and what it means to steward that space. I have not looked at this proposal. I jumped into the meeting late, but I'm curious about things. And so if there's a general consensus that people want to address the invasive species in this place, I think that there's an opportunity
for the town to think about how we're addressing invasive species throughout the town. And I realize that that's a separate issue, but there are invasive species all over the place in this town. And like the garlic mustard right now is blooming, and every time I walk, I pull it. And you want to pull it before it goes to seed, because that's how it spreads. It's a culinary herb that escaped people's gardens and now takes over the landscape. So there's lots of opportunities to think about what invasive species are in the town and what's the plan to manage them. And yes, this parcel requires some attention and there's merit to that, but I think it's short-sighted to think about how do we steward this one plot of land versus how do we create the energy within the town to be thoughtful about, I'm thinking about other places I've lived that have had land trusts consulting with the town to offer education to say, like, here's an invasive plant and here's how you manage it in your own yard, for example. So I think that's one opportunity to be thinking about, and I really like what I'm hearing about having more discussion, not making decisions right away, because I think there's some different opinions about how different plants get managed, how the land gets managed. I loved the idea of maybe a smaller committee getting together to talk about it, but I think it's really important to be thoughtful about not just that plot of land, but the town in general and how we're approaching stewarding the land that's all around us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
That's part of what the pushback is about. It's like, there's a handful of people that got a thing for that parcel of property down there. Seems like, compared to a lot of people who don't. It's not funny, but it's a little scary. What I just heard was, not that anything else didn't make sense, that made an awful lot of sense to me. What is the big deal about that property on Water Street?
I believe it's something that, we do have control. We own it. We obviously own a number of other properties, and that the point taken that we should be addressing it. It's a little harder to address every mile of roadside and everybody's front yard and things like that. But there are definitely a lot of other places where we could be putting attention to trying to mitigate the spread of these invasives.
I think, Andy, that is the answer, that it's town-owned. So that's why we're discussing it. I don't think there's really...
But working in collaboration, getting back to my point again with the Friends of the West River Trail, working with some of the land trusts and some of the other groups, they can be probably pretty helpful too, to even say, hey, it makes total sense to do it, or no, you're barking up the wrong tree, or help us with partnerships to get it done. So, my feeling, and I hate to kick the can down the road, but my feeling is that we're not quite ready to do something right now to take any kind of action on. I fully support trying to mitigate the invasives as much as possible, whether it's anywhere. But beyond that.
So what would the next steps be if we're not making a motion and moving it forward?
Well,
so it does move forward. Well, so it does move. I don't.
I make a motion that we take no action on the properties on Water Street as of right now.
Well, as of right now, but that doesn't mean later.
There's no second, so.
But do you mean
There's
just
no second.
going forward?
No second.
You can't second. That's why I'm married now.
Can I make an alternate motion? Sure.
What if we make a motion that we do, as Clara suggested, put something up on the website, maybe as Susan was suggesting, have some sort of committee that's partly select board people and partly other townspeople to do something, but quickly, because as Erica said in her proposal, and Jackie, it's important that something be done quickly because, if things go to seed, I don't know if anything can be done quickly enough, but yeah, have a motion for something like that so that we don't just sit here and not do anything.
That's what
So I'd like
I
to
want to make sure we're
move
moving forward rather
Right.
than sitting doing nothing.
that under the auspices of the select board that we create a committee of, say, interested parties, 4 or 5 people, and we solicit a little bit more detailed and targeted proposal for removal of invasive species, with a cost associated with that, potentially put it out to bid, and come back at subsequent meetings and hear about progress.
Second.
Is that committee gonna be the same people that are already?
I'm thinking that committee is here.
We decided, we got people here.
Whoever
Can-
folks
can
who
we appoint
are-
those people tonight?
Who are raising their hand with concerns or hopes that,
We can,
right?
Invite the planning commission, as Erica suggested. I'm suggesting also in the chat, a representative from adjacent landowners.
I was thinking adjacent landowners that we have here who are directly impacted, potentially.
I mean, it doesn't affect anyone else in town, it's affecting us, our privacy, everything else.
However, it is a parcel of land that is enjoyed by hundreds of people. I mean, I count probably 50 people walking by every day.
Yeah.
So it is,
But it's
and
near
it's also
here.
it's also owned by the town
Right.
and not just the property owners who are
right, it
adjacent.
needs to be the
Right.
stakeholders of that piece.
Right.
I
But
mean,
we
it's
should-
not the planning commission, it's not the select board, it's,
Yeah.
it's
And
the.
again, I think as a town, we don't want to, like I say, Norman, we don't want to cut our trees down and say, okay, we're clear cutting, too bad, O'Brien, you guys are going to be wide open now. That's not the purpose of any of this. We want to respect your privacy, we want to respect Andy's wishes, my wishes, and Jackie's wishes, Gracie's.
And going back to a point that Tom made earlier, I mean, to establish a plan, not just to act on removing invasives right now, but establish a plan that's gonna define something so we don't sit here every single year and go through all this. I mean, to be honest, this is, I mean, it's, I don't know, it's not, I was gonna say painful, it's not painful, but we need to come to, it is, okay? We need to come to a consensus on a plan so we can, every time something comes forward, it's like, does it fit the plan? Does it fit the plan?
Right.
I mean, plans evolve, that thing too, but we need to establish something more than just this one-off.
Right.
And as an adjacent homeowner, the last thing I want is the land to be ugly and look terrible and cut big massive trees down and clear cut it, whatever. I don't want that. I mean, I want it to look nice, I want it to be beautiful, and I want it to be sustainable moving forward instead, and have wildlife. Bears have come through my backyard, deer, turkeys, I mean, all the things that are in the petition. I support all that. And I think the other adjacent homeowners do as well.
Paul's on
Paul,
the same
yeah,
boat for
yeah.
half an hour.
No, that's all right, I'll get the call.
Really quick, something that may not be considered a point of order. In the motion that's proposed, you talked about going out for bids. There's a technicality between going out for bids and soliciting bids. You all have already had difficulty going out for bids. And you only need 3
If you can get it.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
If you go out specifically and you can't get it, you can't get it. But if you require
Okay,
yourself
say
to go out for
solicit.
bids, that
Okay.
puts you in a different situation. Also, the dollar value is we're just guessing right now, but I think that hampers you a little bit. Perhaps we could back that down.
And this is certainly a different set of expertise that we're going to seek bids from. It's not the same person who's just mowing lawns.
Right.
So whether or not those people are out there, and enough of them out there, we don't know.
And if the motion passes, then how do we set up that committee? Do we have people come
Can we
afterwards?
propose some people tonight? I mean,
Well, I
we
mean,
have such
could
an
people come
interesting
after me, just,
community here.
does the board have to do anything official? We say we're gonna make this committee, then
You can
people
apply
after
to
the
the
meeting can
committee.
come, if you're interested in being in the committee, you can join the committee.
I'm interested to have, are we in discussion? Because we had a
We're in
second.
discussion.
We're in
Okay.
discussion.
So as part of the discussion, I think we've got some really interested people here. Maybe we invite people to join, or others. Jackie,
And
Erica?
once the proposal is put on the website, there may be more people that are interested, because
Maybe.
more people are gonna know about it.
Sure.
I'm sorry, know about the proposal other than whatever else they heard or didn't hear.
It'll be up there tonight.
Yes.
I mention that the proposal that was presented to the board on May 10th may need some changes based on this discussion.
Right.
So,
Yep.
I would not expect to see a proposal, number one, call it a draft proposal, not a specific proposal.
Right.
And you could put it up as a draft, or you could wait, assuming Erica is willing to make changes, to see it in a few days.
I think
Right,
that's a
so
point
can I
that
address the
draft-
question about maybe other people are gonna be interested? So I think here's what I wanna share with you. Number one, we could set it up so that we name 5 people, yourselves included tonight, and say, and this committee has the authority to add 2 others. You don't want the committee so big that it's not manageable. I have experience with that. On the other hand, you can also say, this is the committee, and they're going to listen, anybody can join, conversations, can participate, what have you. But if we don't make some slightly more concrete governance decisions, it hampers progress. And your decision, the committee's decision could be nothing.
And then that gets presented back to us.
And that's
we get
presented
to
back to
decide.
us, and we say, and we discuss it again. But I think if you want your wishes to be heard and acted upon, join the committee and use your voice. And if you're worried that other people might feel like they don't have a voice, you can act in a way that brings their voice in. Does that make sense?
Everybody doesn't have to be on the committee to be heard. I mean,
Right,
I think that,
right.
establish a 5-person committee, and if there's 10 people interested, have them interact.
Have them join.
Yeah. I mean, they don't necessarily, they won't become part of the committee, but they can still have their voices heard through the committee.
Right.
This select board is not going to say no. This select board has a hard time saying no to anything. I just want that on record from me. People could come up and ask us for anything, and we would entertain. I'm not saying that this isn't warranted, but I'm against adding another huge expense. We can't even find anyone to do our roadside mowing. We got our guys renting equipment. And we've talked about this longer than we have this water septic thing or whatever. I mean, we got some other big things going on.
The planning commission.
We've got some we've pawned off things onto the planning commission. I just don't
But
see
that's
where
what
this
they've
is so
done.
important.
We
I really don't. I don't see where, we haven't got our road ordinance done yet, and we're all in a huff to get this done. Things like that don't make any sense to me. Not just because I'm living there, but I got people out of their minds about this. And we just won't say no, or, we'll talk about it for a while longer. We're gonna act tonight. I'm stuck here against it. So I'm on record against it. I'm just 1 and 5 with you. But this is a real friendly select board. It could be a compliment, or you could take it any way you want.
I have a request. Since there seems to be this massive number of people who are against this plan, specifically people up in arms against the thought of brush hogging the front section, I'm hoping that perhaps Erica could explain why it's desirable to specifically brush hog. I don't think it's clear. Because there's a lot of people who think it's a really bad
I
thing.
think
We're going around in a circle.
Hold on, because there is a motion on the table right now, for discussion, and I don't think that's germane to that motion.
I don't even know what the motion really is. It's kind of.
To establish a committee to.
Yes, I'll repeat it. The motion is to establish a committee, not exclusively of select board members perhaps, no one on the select board, town folks, to review the proposal as it has been proposed, as well as to put the proposal on the website, potentially seek a more detailed plan to be proposed and triple bid, and make a recommendation to the select board, and ultimately, if there is a plan to go ahead with the removal of the invasive species, to be that core group of people who will ensure that the adjacent landowners' wishes are respected. That is the desire for this motion.
Did you get that, Sarah?
Wow. That's it.
Doug likes to fill in a couple.
Erica pointed out that we shouldn't require a triple bid because then we may not get.
Right.
We have a purchasing policy that does.
Right, we have a
That's
policy in
dictated.
place
That's not
that
something we-
handles that, yeah, agreed.
I have a question about that committee because that seemed like a really detailed, specific mandate for the committee. And my understanding was that it was a committee that was gonna come together and further the discussion so that the select board didn't have to have the discussion, but could then get recommendations and hear the voices of more than the people who are in the room. Could you clarify, because that, what you just proposed for the committee seemed very, very specific in terms of what the outcomes would be?
Maybe I misspoke. The intention was really to delegate to the committee, not to prescribe it, but among the other recommendations that they would make would relate to the removal of invasive species in the plot of land that is currently owned by the town. If the committee comes up with other recommendations, it would be heard, but again, really what we're focusing on is within the scope of responsibility of the select board, which is the plot of land that's owned by the town. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you. Just the whole thing about the triple bid and all of that seemed really specific, and that was not my understanding of what had been put in the original motion, so I thank you for that.
I don't think that was in the motion, but, okay, motion's on the table. Any other discussion from the board? All in favor of supporting, approving this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
And one opposed. Motion is passed, so next challenge, task, to establish
No
a
volunteers
committee.
for the committee.
Come see us after.
Yes.
I'll volunteer from the board.
And I recommend, after the meeting, come forward and we can take a list, and we may not just establish the committee right now, but if there's 20 people. Okay, thank you, everyone. On to some of the other items. We'll do an easy one. There's an overweight permit.
Thank you. I have an overweight permit here from the National Energy Control Services, Consolidated Communication. So,
They're paying the $10.
they paid their $10. It's for 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 trucks that they have. So I'll make a motion to approve the overweight permit from Consolidated Communications.
Second motion.
And just for the record, our treasurer makes sure that they have liability and all the insurances. We're getting a lot of press on this state.
All in favor of approving the overweight permit, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next item added to the agenda, Patty Dixon has some updates from the school board and school committees.
Yeah, West River Education District, I'll be quick. I'll give a little history. Last summer, the board began work with a long-term planning committee to improve programs and provide equity for all of our schools. This process was initially was not about saving money, and the committee was very determined not to have a loser town, meaning any town that had their school closed. That committee presented an option that was not well received. It included all of the current schools, a special immersive program, which to me sounded pretty cool, but anyway, so let's see, it wasn't well received with enough stakeholders, so the board created a new committee that includes an outside party to help facilitate and try to come to some consensus. This committee has created another committee. So it goes around and around. There are two committees, actually, one for the secondary education, they're task forces, and they're trying to gather information and pros and cons to different options, because these are people who just really basically volunteer their time. So that's the best way to do this, really. And then there's an elementary task force, and they include the administration member, a board member, a teacher, and community members. So the charge for these is to establish and oversee a task force to include aforementioned stakeholders to investigate and make recommendations for programmatic improvements that align with evidence-based instructional practices and provide greater equity and reflect communities' aspirations and values. I've kind of heard those same words a number of times. So the task forces are working. They've had a few meetings. They've actually come up with some pretty good things. But they're doing their presentation to the school board on June 6th at 7 o'clock. At Leland and Gray, and there will be a Zoom option. I don't have it right now with me. But you can either call Drew
Drew
Hazelton, and let's see who else is our other member. Dana West is, and they can probably give you that information. But the reason why I am concerned, because Jamaica School has had a target on its back for a long time, and this is like really serious. They're serious about doing something and changing things up, and so prior to Act 46, Jamaica had 50 kids, give or take. After it passed, we were down to 30 in the blink of an eye. That dramatic of a change should have concerned the central office, where they would research and try to fix what the problem was. Say, there's a problem here and we need to fix it. Nothing. Instead, they put up roadblocks that put JVS further in a hole. Under the direction of the central office, a maintenance department employee came to JVS after the Act 46 went through, and took all of our newest kitchen equipment down to Townsend. And we could not provide fresh meals for our kids, so they get carted up to Jamaica. To further make our school undesirable, and I'm sure they would argue that that's not why they did it, the central office allowed our pre-K license to expire. So we can't even grow our school because we can't do pre-K. So who's going to send their child to Townsend for pre-K and then send them back to Jamaica? They're not going to do that. The town of Jamaica pays its fair share of the $952,000 budget of the central office, and we need to demand our fair share of the benefits of being part of WCSU. We don't want to lose our school. We will not benefit if that happens. We need to be present and active in this. So I'm encouraging everybody to please go on the Wyndham Regional Education District website, and then over to the left, you'll see future planning. Go in there, everything. It's a little weird because they use Google Docs, so sometimes things move, and it's not easy to find your way around. But call me, call Drew, call anybody. We have a chance to lose our school, and it would be bad.
Patty, thank you so much for updating us. Am I under the understanding, though, that the town would need a vote to close the school? So we ultimately have control?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but it would be a shame to go that far.
I know, well, I'm just saying.
I get that.
Less desirable.
It's
Of
open,
course,
nobody's there.
yeah. No one's there.
My understanding is that as long as the building is used for some educational purpose, we don't get a say.
Okay.
Then it's up to the district.
But if the district wanted to sell us the school for the dollar or whatever they do and get rid of it, or close it completely and not have anything going on there, we would have to
We
have
would
the say.
have to vote about
They are kind of talking about having some sort of a something there so they can keep the building in case something changes.
Right, like another.
So it wouldn't be anything that might benefit our community, but if it has some, it has to have an educational thing going on.
Something, I chimed into this meeting several times, more than once, and what I heard was, we don't have a member of the select board at any of these meetings. They want to know, they want to see the town government interested in keeping our school.
I don't think we're the only one.
No, we're not the only town, but I'm just saying, I think to have a physical presence of one or two or whatever people from the select board there says, yes, we care and we don't want this to happen, but.
The issue is they have the meetings Mondays, the same Mondays we have this
I know
meeting.
it,
So we have
I know
no,
it.
unless some people peel out this meeting. we
Unless
couldn't.
you can Zoom something or one person can be designated, I just think we'll make a statement.
I agree.
Or even writing something.
Or writing something.
You know, watching the meeting after.
Because that comment came up in the meetings that I sat in on, in Jamaica when they sent somebody else and stuff, and said, I sat at the meeting and it was like, okay, no. So if that can happen, that would be wonderful. I mean, I think it's needed, as Patty said.
We're a five-member
Clock is
board.
ticking.
Right?
Yeah, we could,
Yeah.
two could peel off.
Person also,
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
or you're suggesting like a letter from the select board.
Which I think we sent them this one.
We did, but that was like a year ago.
Yeah, we did send them a letter.
We've done that once before, yeah.
Support.
Right.
Right.
Anyway.
And even, after every meeting, watch the meeting, say, this concerned us that went on at this meeting. This concerned us.
Right.
Yeah.
Just be in their face.
Yeah.
Okay.
We just, it can't happen.
Yeah, and-
Few people.
Right, and there aren't many people
No.
who really are doing anything, and we want a lot of people there in June. So pass the word,
Yeah.
please, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
If someone could remind me or the board,
I'll try and do that.
I mean, for the
harass me with a phone call or something,
Well, it's all on BCTV.
I know,
So
but
it's much later.
I get off
You can
on,
watch it anytime, yeah.
I get doing stuff and then I'll forget we're busy and stuff. It's not that we don't care. I think I can speak for the board and we appreciate all of the
Very much.
thankless work and energy people put into trying to keep
And,
the target off the back of the
get some people
school.
to run for office, because this board is not really, they wanted to add 6th grade to the elementary, to the high school. Well, the towns down there went crazy. They never asked teachers what their thoughts were. And people went to meetings, they signed petitions, and they still did it. And that didn't go over very well.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
People lose track of how important school is. Okay, Kate, you are up next. Something we're all holding near to us.
I was just concerned that there were select board members who came down with COVID, and I didn't know anything about it until, even though somebody tested positive the day after, and I just want there to be a protocol so we can, even if it's just a very private way of notifying one another if there's something that we have that's contagious that would affect other people who are on the select board as well. I'm not in person tonight because of COVID, so I just would like there to be some sort of protocol so that doesn't, I was shocked and anyway, I heard about it only like 2 weeks later, so that's all.
And I agree, and I apologize that I'm a guilty party, so
Well, I mean,
I think it's a point well taken.
I can make a motion that if an employee or a town official has a contagious disease, that they report that to the town clerk so that she can let others who maybe have been exposed to the disease.
Is that illegal?
That may be illegal, you're right. Well, no, it's not illegal if the person.
It's a courtesy, like if I'm sick and I know
There are special rules for COVID right now. So if we limited it to COVID, then I'm perfectly
Okay,
comfortable
right.
exposure.
COVID, well, limited.
Any infectious disease.
All right, let me rephrase
right,
that.
you're going
So I'll make a
right,
motion that if any town official or town employee tests positive for COVID, that the town clerk is notified so that others who potentially were exposed could be notified.
Second.
I think it should just be a courtesy in this protocol in place, isn't there? That, aren't you supposed to like stay? I didn't know I had it.
I know.
And me and Greg are stickering dogs like 2 or 3 days later.
You texted me the next day, and I knew that you had it.
Right.
But what Kate's saying is she didn't.
I didn't know.
She had no
Until the next
idea. So she
meeting.
showed up at the meeting, the next meeting, I said, oh, did you know that Andy
2 weeks
had
later.
COVID?
Yeah.
And she's like, no.
Yeah, courtesy call would be fine with me, but I would like there to be a protocol that we have a courtesy call or something, or text.
But that's what my motion is, it's not a courtesy requirement.
Yeah.
All in favor of that motion, just as a courtesy?
Let Sarah know and Sarah will inform.
Aye.
Aye.
No,
You're opposed.
it's already in place in the state of Vermont, the COVID protocol.
Done.
But we didn't
But it
do it.
wasn't done.
We didn't do it.
So motion passes, so.
Okay,
And
Yeah.
I'm not mad at anybody, I just want it to be prevented in the future. Thanks. Maybe it's probably moved for me at this point, but.
Okay, thanks. So next item is to review the pay orders, time sheets. There's some, we'll sign off on all those. Terry has shared those with us all. Any other public concerns? Karen?
I can't remember what the protocol is for Rossonville Schoolhouse and someone using it. The Rosson family reunion is set for August 20th, which they've done before. I don't think they annually do this, but they haven't for a couple of years because of COVID. Do they need to do anything? Do you know?
I don't remember a specific protocol, but I believe we've notified the power company to turn on the power.
Okay.
So I mean, the power's there, but it just has to be flipped on. And probably just get our approval, so
Do they
just
need
be aware.
insurance? Is it like the town hall?
I can't remember.
I don't remember. I mean, I would think it'd be the same, similar
We just
rental
tested
as
it
the
last
town
summer
hall.
because they were thinking of doing it last summer and then it fell through.
Our treasurer.
Let's,
Yeah.
we'll note that and we'll figure out what we gotta do,
Right.
by August 20th, and it's great to have.
Right, do we want to make a motion just so that it's up to you?
We don't need to make it.
Okay.
It's just part of business.
They've been doing it for over 100 years.
I know, right?
They probably remember how.
They
Look at your smiles.
Yeah, we fixed
And
it.
I had one more thing.
Yeah.
The Boy Scouts are meeting tomorrow night at 5 o'clock at the Masonic Hall. They'll be walking up and putting a new flag on the common. Thanks to the town for getting solar lights to lighten up the flag on the common.
And are they up?
They're up, your road crew put them up, so that was great.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they will also be putting flags on the cemeteries for the veterans.
That's at 5 tomorrow?
That's at 5 tomorrow.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, that's awesome.
Thank you.
I know, thank you Derek for mentioning it before.
That's my personal pet peeve, so I'm pretty pleased about that. No, that's exciting. We're excited to have the lights on the flag and to have that honored in that way. So thank you for all of you who made that happen.
There you go.
We have a solar light on ours.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, that's for the public, yeah. I'd like to, this is an old tune that you've heard from me, but you're gonna hear it again. The graffiti on the wall down at the Tewksbury House, and Tewksbury House in general. It's been 2 years now since we visited that issue. I recall, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that at that time, the board did write a letter or contacted the owners of the house, and they got back to you and they said they would put up signs, which they did, which are about this big, and that down the road, they may put a fence around it, and nothing else has been heard of. The other thing is, I know the select board has already looked into legality of that's a private property. The other piece is, I would like to request the select board to contact them again and ask permission to paint over the graffiti. And can you do that?
I have tried through Raymond, is his name Raymond Grace? Fletcher?
Yes, oh.
And he has no contact number. Our clerk, we have only an address. And the only one other option I can think of is the past caretaker, but I couldn't find any way to talk to his.
Who's the caretaker?
Fletcher.
Yes, I talked to him and he didn't know how to get a phone number. I don't know how he gets paid.
Keep in contact. Keep in contact with the homeowner.
Excuse me?
He told me the other day that I think he's in touch with the daughter.
The daughter, and I was talking to Raymond the other day, he's an incredible piece of Jamaica.
Yeah.
And he said that the daughter had asked about that property, he said, you want my honest opinion? Have the fire department use it as like
Right.
burn it down, and he's like,
I didn't know
okay.
that. I didn't know about the daughter that she,
Yeah, she's.
But he told me to wait a couple of days so that the father dies and then try to buy the land on top of the mountain.
the different property, but I did make 2 attempts. And the only other way I could maybe find out, because I'll go down, I would go down if he wanted me to. If he'd let me, I'd go down and just paint over.
Right.
Yeah.
But I can't get a hold of anyone. And if I go down there, it's vandalism.
Paint over it for free. I mean, it's separate.
I can't go down there and do
It's
that.
like a little-
Yeah, no, it's not
Probably
worth it.
It's not.
the Fletcher guy, he could probably contact someone and ask.
Maybe, I asked him, didn't I?
Where did you send the tax bill? I mean, what I hear from you guys all the time is, well, he pays his taxes, so we can't do anything.
Well, we could write him a letter, and we have written him a letter, and with no.
I wrote him a letter, private letter, to John Raymond himself, but I didn't hear anything.
But I think he's in, like a old folks home.
Yeah, that's what he, but he has somebody
What
take
about the
it.
daughter? I mean, could we try to get a hold of the daughter through?
We don't need to discuss this, we'll try to get it, I mean, not,
Right.
we don't need to, this level of discussion. We
So the
will-
consensus is that you will do something, you will try to get hold of somebody.
That's the key word, try, but it seems
Well,
unresponsive,
Get
yeah.
permission to paint it, I mean, and then,
We've tried.
Believe me,
I know,
I would love to paint it. And not that it offends me so much, just that it offends other people.
well, it's graffiti, and graffiti is, you know, we've got more graffiti in the town now too, up on South Hill, Angeles.
Yeah, I'm on board with this concern too. I think it's really bad for the town, it's bad for tourism, everybody going to the state park probably feels like they're driving through the inner city, and it's just, it's really unattractive, and anyway. I was wondering if it's possible, I mean, could you propose an ordinance where you could fine homeowners who allow properties to be neglected? I mean, because that is a public.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, I mean, this is one where we're all gonna say.
We can propose any kind of ordinance, but it's not necessarily easy to push one up, so to speak, and have it well defined that it's gonna, you know, apply to certain things and not others, I mean, it's complicated.
Okay.
Mrs. Raymond.
Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of a significant departure from how the town has been structured for.
But let's not wait.
We'll reach out again.
Yes,
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you, Claire.
I'll be back.
Okay.
and if anybody has Raymond Fletcher's information,
Grace,
he could be copied on a
we'll
letter.
talk to him.
Right.
Okay. Tom, your call.
Anyone else? Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.